Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. I am your host Chef Andy, and today we are going to be making a very simple dish, something that you can do in a span of about 10 to 15 minutes just ahead of lunch, something that you can carry as well to work with you, something that you can pack for the kids as a lunch meal or as a snack even on the weekends. We are going to be making some meatballs today. And without further ado, I'm just going to introduce you to what we're going to be working with today. So from the front there, I have some cumin powder, I have some paprika powder, I have one regular egg, I've got some salt, I've got some homemade barbecue sauce, I've got some minced meat, very lean mince, I've got some cucumber leaves here that we're going to be playing with later. And then in the bowl there, I have breadcrumbs and I have some all-purpose flour. I've got some vinegar, some oil, or some olive oil, some white and red onions, and then on the bowl at the end I have some parmesan, some chopped coriander, and some oregano, which we'll be playing with later when we garnish. So without further ado, we're just gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna ask you now to grab your cookbooks, grab your pens. Let's get cooking and see you after the short break. Welcome ladies and gentlemen. For those who missed out on the introductory bit of the show, my name is Chef Andy and you're watching Lunch Guide. We are going to be working on some meatballs today, so we're just gonna get our pan going on the side here. So all I want to do is get the oil hot in advance before we actually get into the meatball making process. So I'm just gonna bring that to some low heat. So we're just gonna give that some time to heat up. So on this end, for those who missed out, we are working on meatballs today. I'm just going to introduce the ingredients as we go. So I'm going to start with our lean beef mince. I'm just gonna drop that in the bowl there. I'm gonna be using a spoon today. I'm not going to be working with my hands. Right, so I've got some salt there. I've got some barbecue sauce. This we're going to be working with later. So I've got some flour and some breadcrumbs in this bowl. I'm going to be using a raw egg as well, a bit of cumin powder and a bit of paprika powder, and last but not least some onions. So this process is basically where I incorporate all the ingredients into my meatball mixture. So I'm just going to show you how to do it. Please, if you do feel better working with your hands, I accept. If you feel like using a spoon, it's also allowed. So today I'm going to show you some nice ways of doing it, but doing it clean without getting your hands messy. So we're just going to start by breaking up our mince in a bowl. Remember, I'm working with a wooden spoon. You can use any spoon of your choice. So I'm just going to quickly break that up. Remember to not use mince that is straight from the freezer, because you might actually have bits and pieces of frozen meat after you cooked your meatballs, and that might not cook through. So always use mince at least fresh, and if not fresh, take it out of the freezer beforehand. Take it out of the freezer overnight, leave it in your refrigerator, let it defrost slowly so it will be ready to work with the following day. So I'm just going to finish breaking that up. Alright, and then into the bowl I'm going to be incorporating some white onions and some red onions. Just equal quantities is allowed. If you don't feel like using white or red onions, you can also use some chives, you can use some leeks, also allowed. So I'm just gonna quickly give that a nice mix. So basically, meatballs is a very simple technique. It's all about incorporating all your ingredients into the mince. Give it a few seconds and then roll them up into balls straight in your hot oil. Soon as they come out, I'm also going to show you a technique of serving them nice and saucy. Right, so in the bowl I'm going to go with paprika and cumin powder, about a teaspoon each. Just give that a nice mix all round. So what I do is I always start with my seasonings first, because remember, these are the ones that you really want to incorporate in the meat. and then I'm gonna just go with my flour and my breadcrumbs after that. So this is just to bind it. All right, so always go with your seasoning first. Your spices as well, always start with those first, because that's what you really want to give the meat the flavor in the beginning stages. So to that I'm just going to add about a teaspoon of salt. Just gonna give that a nice beautiful mix. Right, and then I'm going to add a bit of oregano, about a teaspoon as well, and a bit of chopped coriander, also a teaspoon. I'm just gonna keep mixing. So remember, this stage is all about getting the flavors into your meat. Remember, you wanna do this before you put your flour and your eggs in there, because then once you bind it, you might not be able to get the flavors to infuse. So nice, beautiful mix, as you can see, beautiful, nice colors coming through. So now we are just going to go in with our binding process, which is basically where we incorporate our egg. I'm just gonna break one raw egg in there. Then we're just gonna give that a nice, quick mix. Right. So in the bowl right in front of me here, I've got some flour and some breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to add that in small quantities. Remember, you don't want to throw the mixture all at once. It might become too thick and you might actually have a very lump-sum meatball that will take long to cook. So what I do is I'm going to add half and half. So I'm going to start with my flour. I'm just going to go half of that, and then half of my breadcrumbs as well. So as I said, it's a binding process, so you don't want to just chuck everything in there at once. You want to build it slowly as you go. My oil is now nicely heating up now, so I'm just going to turn that to low. Right, so I'm just going to keep going around with my spoon like that. And you'll immediately notice that the meat starts to actually form into one big lump as you start incorporating your flour and breadcrumbs. That's what you're looking for. Remember, you're not trying to get it too dry, you're just trying to get it to bind. So I'll show you some checkpoints you need to watch out for as you continue with this process. So nice, beautiful, even mix there. So what I like to do is I like to scoop some of that with a spoon off the bowl, and I like to turn it over. So as you can see, it takes about 2 to 3 seconds to fall off the spoon. That means it's almost there. So I'm just going to add about a teaspoon of flour and a bit of breadcrumbs. I'm just gonna mix that in again. So basically the technique here is I'm trying to show you when you know your mixture is ready to actually be rolled out into balls, and I always use a spoon. It's the best way to do it. And remember, this works for all the spoons, be it a wooden spoon, a plastic spoon, it's always going to give you the same result. I like to use a wooden one because it's always consistent. So, as I said, nice, beautiful mixture there. Just gonna keep going around. All right, so I'm going to show you the technique again for those who missed it on the first time. So this is a technique of knowing how, when your mixture is ready to actually form into balls and when it's ready to go into the flour, into the oil. So all I do is I always take a small scoop and press it along on the sides of my bowl. And what I do is I hold it over my bowl and I turn it. And as you can see, it takes about 4 to 5 seconds before it falls off. This is a good checkpoint for you to know that your meatball mixture is perfect. It's now ready to go. Right, so this is now well off ready. So for those who missed out on our last episode where I explained the points to check on when putting anything in your oil, as I always said, I always like to use a bit of breadcrumbs or anything dry that I can find next to me. So all I do is I always take a small pinch of flour, for instance, and I just drop that on the top surface of the oil, and as soon as it bubbles and it makes that small hiss, I know my oil is good to go. The technique here is to make sure your oil is just hot enough. It's not too hot, it's not cold, it's not warm. And the idea is you don't want it too hot because it's going to burn your mixture. You don't want it too cool because once you drop it in there, your meatballs are gonna get soggy. They're going to start absorbing the oil and you're not going to get that beautiful crispy crust on the outside. Right. So now I'm just going to show you how to get a nice consistent meatball every time you make them. There's always a belief that it's a little tricky to get all your meatballs to look exactly the same. Now today I'm going to show you how to get them to look exactly the same without having to stress about it, okay? So what I like to do is I like to use an ice cream scoop. So this is also something that a lot of people have in their homes. They're not really using, and it actually comes in handy in a lot of ways. And this is another way you can actually use your ice cream scoop. So I'm just going to get that excess meat off the spoon there. And I'm just gonna put that away. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just, actually something that I almost forgot, always have a bowl of water next to you. So this is basically to aid in making sure that your meat does not stick to your ice cream scoop. So it's always good to have a bit of a rinse before you do that. So I'm just going to rinse it quickly in there, give it a few shakes, make sure not to leave any of the water on the spoon. Give it a nice shake, make sure there's no water coming from there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to press my meatball mixture on the sides like that. So all I'm looking for is just to make sure that it's actually level covered right across the top. Then I'm going to use a spoon here to get rid of the excess that is on the sides like that. So remember, this is a nice perfect way to get your meatballs to all be the same size. It's a stress-free way of doing it as opposed to putting it on a scale. But I also insist, if you don't own one of these, you can optionally go and get yourself one, and if you can't find one, you can always just have a scale on the side. You can actually measure them out and then roll them after. So this is a nice, easier way to do it. It's stress-free, as I said, it makes a less of a mess, and it actually looks consistent. So all I'm going to do is I'm now going to just press the sides of my scoop there, and as you can see, the ball just basically, the scoop does everything for you. So once it just turns all the way around, just give it a few presses, it just rolls, and all I do is drop it straight in the oil. Alright, so I'm just going to rinse that and do the same with the rest of the mixture. So I'm gonna go a little fast so that we can time it. Remember, you're just cooking them till they're crispy on the outside. Just going to get rid of the excesses on the side, as I said. And then once more, play around with your scoop there, easy peasy, goes in the oil. So this is now going on low heat. Remember, I don't want to cook them too fast, I want them to cook right through. Just gonna press a bit more. So we're just going to keep on with the process until we get to the end of the mixture. So use a spoon if you're actually trying to work a little faster. It helps you to fill up the scoop even more. Alright, so just remember to always have it level. Just have it measured right level, just off the top. Give it a nice quick touch there. That goes in the oil. So very easy technique to do your meatballs from home. It's something you can actually train your kids to do, and they can be able to do it on their own. If you're comfortable doing the mincemeat mixture in advance, you can leave it in the fridge. Show them how to do it, give them the pointers on how to check on the oil, and in most occasions, most kids will be able to make this on their own at home. Alright, so we're just getting to the last bit of a mixture there. So as you can see, you might get to a point where you've got this tiny little piece that you can't really get a full scoop of. I always say don't stress about it, just wet the palm of your hands a little bit like that. grab the meatball and just work it on the palm of your hand. So you can always save this for a taster. You can just fry this and just give it to your little toddler, your child running around wanting to taste. Always save that little one for them. And then that's just gonna go in there. So very simple technique. We're now just going to go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, we're gonna look at what our meatballs look like. So this is going to cook for about 5 to 6 minutes. I'm going to take them out and then I'm going to have a look and see if they're cooked right through. But you're going to be able to join us in a little bit. We're gonna take a short commercial break. Don't touch that dial. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. For those who missed out before we went on our break, we were just doing some beautiful meatballs here in the oil, and as you can see, we're just starting to take them out. So I'm just going to finish taking those out, and you can see beautiful brown color there, crispy texture on the outside, cooked through on the inside. Remember, these are cooking on low heat, 6 to 7 minutes, right? Beautiful, nice colors there. So we're just going to set those on some parchment paper or some serviettes or some napkins. Let that actually just drain the excess oil out. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch pans now. And now basically what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you the finishing process of your meatballs, a way to serve them and make sure that they're not so dry, make sure they're nice and juicy, easier to have, and actually even a better way to complement your dish. So I'm just going to start off here. I'm just going to grab my plate and I'm just going to get this ready for plating. So this is some homemade barbecue sauce. If you don't know how to make it, if you don't have a recipe for it, you can always get a convenient bottle at your stores. There's a lot of varieties out there, but we are going to make this in the show very soon to come. I am going to show you how to make it yourselves. So today I'm just going to be using it on the side as an accompaniment, but we are going to come back to this, okay? So I'm just going to take a teaspoon of that, maybe 2 teaspoons, or rather 2 teaspoons, and I'm just gonna drop that on the plate here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to work a nice little line across like that. So remember, this is just ways I play around with to try and make the dish look a little nicer. And then here I have some cucumber flowers that we had just done earlier. So this is basically, all you need to do that is just grab your cucumber, hold it lengthways, and then use your peeler to just work right through. You always get those nice, beautiful flowers like that. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to play around with those rosettes. Very easy technique of garnishing. As I said, a more stress-free, an easier way to actually put an appeal to your plate. Just complement all that hard work you put into your meatballs earlier. Right, so easy peasy stuff. Just gonna play around with those, put those all around. And for the last bit, I'm just going to hold it on the sides like that, and I'm just gonna go right around the rosettes. So very easy technique of garnishing your plate. Actually gives your plate a little bit of a visual, makes you look like you actually put a bit of more effort on your dish. So very simple, easy way to garnish that. And then on the sides here, I've got some coriander leaves, and I've got some Parmesan cheese, which I'm just going to use to finish that off. So in the pan here, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a bit of oil in there, and then I'm just going to go with my barbecue sauce. So we're just going to reheat that, just get it to be a little runnier. So I'm adding a bit of olive oil just to add that nice finishing gloss to your sauce. All right, so I'm just gonna use a spoon to spread that around, and as you can see, it's nice, it's thick. Right, so To that, I'm going to add a bit of the oregano and then a bit of the coriander leaves. Then, so remember, this is on low heat. All I'm going to do now is to add all my meatballs in there, like that. I'm gonna put that away now. So all you want to do is just wiggle your pan. Remember, all you're doing is coating them. So all I'm going to do is just play around with them. At this point, I can turn off my heat. So all I'm doing is getting that nice, beautiful golden color on the meatballs. Remember, this is just for visual, it's just for appeal. Gives it it actually gives it a bit of flavor on the outside as well, just to complement that crispy outside. So very simple technique. And yeah, it's as simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. Those are now very ready to serve. We're just going to move those onto our plate here. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, you can see by the texture of them on the outside, nice and crispy. Remember, cook them on low heat. You're going to actually cook them through. You're going to get a beautiful texture on the outside, and it actually evens out and gives a beautiful color at the end. So all I'm going to do is now just put them on the plate like that. As I said, very, very simple way to serve your meatballs. Remember, this you can actually have with a bit of pasta. You can have it with rice on the side. Right, there we go. I'm just gonna squeeze that last one there. So this I'm actually just going to cut right through in the board here, because I want to show you the inside. I just want to show you things to watch for when you want to check if it's cooked through. So as you can see, the color on the inside is nice and even, so it's not overcooked. The meat is just nicely juicy, and you can see it's still moist on the inside. So very good checkpoint for making sure that your meatballs are cooked right through. Always just save that little piece, cut it through the middle. Actually, you can also just use your fingers to touch. Make sure it's not too moist. Make sure it's just cooked right through, and also check for the color of the meat. Make sure it's still not, it doesn't have any specks of red in there. So this is actually a very well cooked meatball that's cooked to medium, so it's very perfect to serve. So I'm just going to finish off our plating here. So I'm just going to play around with a bit of the chopped coriander again. And last but not least, a bit of Parmesan cheese. For those who are lactose intolerant, if you're not allowed to have cheese, you can avoid this part of the garnishing stage. And then I'm just gonna go right across the plate like that. So ladies and gentlemen, homemade meatballs, a very easy technique, something you can show your kids, something you can do at home, something you can do for a light lunch, for packed lunches, for snacks you wanna carry when you travel. My name is Chef Andy. I have been your host today. You have actually been tuning in to Lunch Guide. This is the name of the show. The name of the show is Lunch Guide. You've been watching BrandPlus TV. It's been a pleasure being with you today. So from here at the studios and from myself, have a lovely day. Goodbye.